Can Kalen DeBoer stop the fall of Alabama Crimson Tide football? I'm not saying that Alabama's about to disappear from the college football landscape. I'm not saying they're about to go 6-6. I am not saying that Tuscaloosa is about to become a historical monument where they show kids like, hey, that's Nick Saban. Oh man, that's what fear used to look like. They are still recruiting at a high level. They're still putting players in the NFL. They are still winning games. They are still living in the playoff conversation. A little bit, but that's exactly the problem. Because under Nick Saban, they did not live in the playoff conversation. They were the conversation. And that's the difference in, truthfully, what people in Tuscaloosa are starting to feel and starting to realize. Teams used to shout and their fans would be like, we want Bama. Every single time that their team got even the tiniest bit of juice. Like beat a ranked team at home while the student section is acting like they just overthrew a government. Alabama was the final boss. You didn't say we want Bama because you actually wanted to deal with them. You said it because you wanted to prove that you were brave enough to even ask. But now, we cannot even get a teenager to say we want Bama with sincerity. Because Alabama's biggest weapon under Nick Saban, it wasn't just talent, it was fear. Like teams didn't just play Alabama, they survived Alabama. It was one of them teams that you had to you have to beat them until the clock says 0, otherwise they will find a way. Team survived Alabama. You could be 10-1, top 10 in the country, full of NFL players, and Alabama will walk into the stadium like your season was paperwork. Like they beat you physically, they beat you mentally, they beat you before the first commercial break. The aura was real. And the question now is not whether Kalen DeBoer can coach. He can coach. The question is whether he can protect the thing that made Alabama different. Not the logo, not the uniforms, not the facilities, not the inevitability. Because once that goes away, yes, you can still be elite, but you're not Bama elite. And here's what makes the conversation uncomfortable is because Kalen DeBoer is a good football coach. And actually, he's a very good football coach. He took Washington to the national championship game. He harassed the Pac-12 as the head coach at Fresno State. Everywhere the dude has been, he has won. So this ain't one of them situations where you look at the guy coaching and say, oh, they hired the wrong guy. Like that would be easy. You might say, is it the right fit? But no, this is actually a harder question because DeBoer might be good and still not be good enough to keep Alabama as Alabama. 20 wins in 2 years, that ain't going to calm people down. It actually makes them ask why it was not 24. That is the standard that Nick Saban left behind. And that is what Kalen DeBoer walked into. And he knew what he was walking into. He walked into an active empire. And the problem with inheriting an empire is that people don't grade you on whether your kingdom is still rich. They grade you on whether the borders are still expanding. And that's not happening right now. Let's go back to where all this started. Because Nick Saban arrived in 2007. Alabama, still a proud brand. They wasn't a modern monster at all. They were coming off the Mike Shula era. They had tradition, they had fans, they had history, they had facilities. But they did not have fear at all. Nobody was scared of them. Like Saban's first team went 7-6. They lost to Louisiana Monroe. They finished 4-4 in the SEC. And guess what bowl game they went to? The Independence Bowl. If they go to the Independence Bowl now, it's going to be problems. And that wasn't Alabama as we know it now. It was a full reconstruction. By year 2, Saban had them 12-2, winning the SEC West, playing in the SEC championship game, and then going to the Sugar Bowl. By year 3, 14-0, SEC champs, national champions. Mark Ingram, he wins the Heisman Trophy. And at that point in time, the machine is born. And this is one of the fastest monster builds in college football history. Now, we're going to see if they can do it in Indiana. But prior to that, that's it. But here's the difference, though, is that Saban got Alabama when the standard had slipped. DeBoer got Alabama when the standard was almost impossible. Like Saban, he could still sell a dream. DeBoer has to maintain a dynasty without the man who made the dynasty believable, standing on the sideline. That is a totally different job. And this is where DeBoer's resume actually creates one real unknown because he's actually never had to build something long-term at a Division I level. And that's not an insult to him. It's just the reality and the facts of the path. Like he's been excellent everywhere, but he's not been anywhere long enough for us to know what his long-term monster or roster vision, what it looks like after year 4, year 5, year 6. We know he can prepare. We know he can scheme. We know he can win games. But can he build a sustainable machine? Now at Alabama, because that's the job. Not winning a season, building a machine. This is where Alabama fans are pretending not to be nervous while absolutely being nervous. And you should be. Alabama's 2025 class, it was elite. 2026, elite on paper. And that is still national championship talent. And that is still the kind of roster that almost every single coach in America would trade their entire program to have. But the warning light is on in the 2027 class. As of this week, Alabama is sitting in the 60s in the 247 composite team rankings. That is behind Houston. Now, do I think Alabama is going to finish there? No, but let's not be goofy. Alabama being anywhere near that neighborhood, it feels unnatural. Alabama has 11 commits as of June 25th. 1 5-star, 2 4-stars, 7 3-stars, and a kicker. And yes, we understand it is expected to be a smaller class, but USC and LSU are also taking smaller classes, and they're sitting at, like 14 and 18 right now. Why does Alabama have to climb from there at all at this point when you look at what the other top teams are doing? Because under Saban, the idea of Alabama being outside of the top 50 in recruiting at any point, it felt like a clerical error. And if you watch this show for any length of time, like you know that recruiting was always the thing that made me nervous about Kalen DeBoer. Always. Not because he can't identify talent, because he can. Most coaches can. But because at Washington, recruiting was a festering issue that he covered up with Bobby Fischer level coaching. He was playing chess. He was maximizing. He was creating advantages with scheme, with development, with quarterback play, and game day decisions. But Alabama is different. At Alabama, recruiting is not one part of the job. Recruiting is the oxygen that you need to stay at the highest levels of college football year in and year out. The rosters around you are getting stronger. And at some point, you have to have the dudes. But the game has changed on them. Even if DeBoer recruits well, the sport itself has changed in a way that nerfs Alabama's old advantage. In 2007, if Nick Saban signed you, Alabama basically had you. There was no open transfer portal, no NIL bidding wars every single offseason. It was bag men and duffel bags. The job was much simpler. It wasn't easier, but it was simpler. You stack talent, develop talent. And in 2026, the job is different. You don't recruit a player once. You recruit your own roster every single year. You recruit the portal. You recruit high school. You recruit agents. You recruit families. You got to recruit your own collectives and boosters. And you recruit the backup quarterback who thinks he should be starting because 3 message board posters and his trainer actually said that that's the truth. This is a different sport because everybody with money and ambition now has a path. Georgia ain't chasing Alabama anymore. Georgia, in the last few years, they got more national championships. They are Alabama's peer. Ohio State and Oregon are operating like professional organizations. Texas is back in the national power conversation. LSU, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, USC, they all got a pitch and they all got bread. But the question is, how has the performance been? Because Nick Saban's first 3 years at Alabama, 7-6, 12-2, 14-0. That's 33-8. An SEC title game, a national title, and the birth of a machine. Kalen DeBoer's year 1, 9-4. Year 2, 11-4. 29 wins in 2 seasons. He beat ranked teams. He got Alabama back to the SEC championship game. He got them into the expanded playoff. He even won a playoff game against Oklahoma. Like, that is good. At Alabama, that makes people uncomfortable because there were so many people, including me, that was like Alabama had no business in the playoff. Notre Dame or BYU instead of them after the way that they got ran out the building in the SEC championship game and then the way they played against Auburn prior to that and the fact that they lost to sorry Florida State last year. Alabama also lost games that made people question the direction. Go back to 2024. The season ended with a ReliaQuest Bowl loss to Michigan. And that is really what snapped the feeling of automatic dominance. Then you look at the way that Indiana blasted them in the Rose Bowl when they thought, oh, yeah, it's Indiana. Look at their roster. Look at our roster. And they got picked to pieces. The fall of Alabama isn't about losing a game. Everybody loses now and then. The fall is about losing the aura. Alabama used to make teams scared to play. Now Alabama is the team people circling like, yeah, buddy, we can't wait to knock the dust off of them, boy. And when that happens, the jersey does not win in first quarters anymore. You can't just roll your helmets out and win. That don't happen. But now, how is this NFL draft outlook looking for? That helps you recruit. That's another part of the story. Because in the drafts after Saban's first seasons, the Tide had 0 players picked in 2008, 4 in 2009, 6 in 2010. That was the ramp up. Alabama went from not producing draft picks to producing first rounders consistently and eventually becoming the NFL factory of college football. Under DeBoer, the numbers are still looking strong. 7 Alabama players drafted in 2025, 10 in 2026. That's big time. But them Saban dudes are getting up out of there. A lot of them players were recruited, developed, and brought into the Alabama ecosystem under the Saban infrastructure. And DeBoer, he deserves credit for keeping the operation functional. But the real test is not whether he can cash them Saban checks. The test is whether he can print new ones. And that means a few things have to happen. You're going to have Keelan Russell or Austin Mack, whoever's going to be the starting quarterback, to ball out like DeBoer's inherited quarterbacks all did before him. Jake Hayner, Michael Penix Jr., Ty Simpson. DeBoer's had a track record with quarterbacks, and that gives Alabama fans hope, and it should. But it also means that either Russell or Mack cannot just be talented. They have to become the next proof point. And the 2025-2026 recruiting classes have to live up to what the rankings said of them. Player retention has to hold. The offensive identity has to become more than we have better players than you. And Kane Womack's defense has to become feared, not just talented. That's a lot of pressure, but that's what Alabama is. But I also want to look at DeBoer's strengths and look at his weaknesses, because his strength is obvious. The dude can coach. He can win close games. He can make good in-game decisions. He understands offense. He understands advantages. And if you have one play to win a football game, I'm not sure that there is any coach in the country that I would want scheming it up than Kalen DeBoer. That's the truth. And in this new era, marginal decision-making matters more than ever. And if Alabama is not going to be the 24 points better than everybody anymore, then the head coach's fourth quarter decision-makings matter. But also being able to run the football. Alabama was one of the worst teams in the country running the football in 2024 and 2025. It was even worse. So yes, them fourth quarter decisions, the timeout, the fourth down call, the protection adjustment, the red zone tendencies, all of them, that's where he's valuable. But the weakness is, can he make Alabama physically inevitable? Can he create the discipline, the ruthlessness, the weekly consistency, the player development pipeline, the recruiting machine, the defensive fear? Because the problem is, when Alabama played Florida State last year, they got pushed around by Florida State, who couldn't make it through the ACC. This is the thing where Alabama walks into a stadium and the other team already feels like it's about to be a long day. Nobody feels that. They're not like, oh man, you got to ice up after this game. No, you telling Alabama to ice up right now. You go back to his Washington teams, they were brilliant. But Alabama's dynasty wasn't built on brilliance alone. It was built on suffocation. You didn't just lose to Alabama. You got processed. You got put through the meat grinder. DeBoer has to build Alabama's next identity, not Saban's sequel. It's got to be his own version, because he can't be Saban. Nobody can. If you hire a guy after the greatest coach of all time and the plan is to be that guy, you already lost. And right now, we don't know if that version is terrifying or whether it's just very good. Can he stop the fall? Because we're watching it happen in real time. But if we only define the fall correctly, the fall of Alabama is not 6-6. It's not irrelevance. It's not Alabama becoming Nebraska after the triple option. It's not Alabama waiting around like Miami telling everybody the comeback is right around the corner. The fall is normalization, and that's the danger. Alabama becoming just another program, a top 10 roster, playoff contender, occasional SEC shot, maybe a national championship if the bracket breaks right. For almost every other school in America, that's paradise. But for Alabama, that is a downgrade. And here's where I think the sport has changed too much for Alabama to ever fully go back to where it was. Everybody got money now, and everybody got a pitch. Everybody got a pathway for you to get to the league. Like, Alabama's old advantage was constriction of the market. The best players wanted to go to where the best players were. Now the best players can get paid to go be the best player somewhere else. And that changes the math. So that's why 2026 is huge for Kalen DeBoer. Not because he's on the hot seat. The dude just got a contract extension. This ain't about job security. This is bigger than that. This is about identity. Is Alabama still the bully? Can they return to being the bully? Not if they can't run a damn football. I'm going to tell you that right now. Or is Alabama now just a rich kid in the neighborhood? Because this year, almost nobody is going to pick the Tide to finish top 2 in the SEC. They're going to have them between 5th and 7th, probably. Who's going to put them in front of Georgia, Texas A&M, LSU, Ole Miss, and Texas? Excuse me. Like, maybe even lower depending on how people feel in July. The scary part is when neutral people start saying, yeah, I can see them finishing 5th. That's how aura dies. Not just with one bad season, but with reasonable doubt. People looking at Alabama and saying, good team, but are they better than Texas? Better than Georgia? Better than LSU? Better than Ole Miss? Better than A&M? That's the conversation that used to sound ridiculous. So the question is, can DeBoer stop the fall of Bama? My answer is, he can stop the collapse. I don't think Alabama is falling off a cliff. The roster is too talented, the brand is too strong, the resources are big, the coach is too good. But can he stop the normalization? No. And that's the harder question, because normalization is not dramatic. It don't look like a disaster. It looks like 10-3. Looks like the occasional playoff appearance. Looks like a top 10 roster. It looks like, 6, 7 NFL draft picks. It looks like people saying, what are Alabama fans complaining about? They're still really good. And that's the trap, because Alabama didn't become Alabama by accepting really good. I believe Alabama is headed toward being less of a guaranteed top 3 program and more of a top 10 to 15 national power. Still dangerous, still capable, still able to win a championship in the right year and circumstances. But it ain't inevitable. It ain't automatic. Not the yearly preseason default. Not the program everybody has to measure itself against every single Saturday. And that's not because Kalen DeBoer can't coach, because the dude can. It's because college football changed. Transfer portal changed, the NIL changed, the revenue sharing changed it, the playoff changed it, the market changed it. Nick Saban was the perfect coach for an era where Alabama could stockpile talent, enforce discipline, dominate development, and make patience part of the process. Kalen DeBoer is coaching in an era where patience has a price. Backups have agents, and everybody with a billionaire can start acting brave. That is a whole new world. Sorry, Bama fans. So the question ain't whether Alabama can still be good, of course, but times have changed, and that's the reality. You guys let me know in the comments. Is Alabama still a top 3 program in college football? Can Kalen DeBoer bring the fear back? Or has NIL and the transfer portal permanently changed what Alabama can be? Like, share, subscribe, get notifications. Till next time, stay unafraid.